So, hello everybody, and welcome to the Versus Virus Lunch and Learn. I think today we are in edition number 18, and I'm very happy that I can say hello to all of you. It's great that have you here on the Versus Virus Incubator, and today you see it's me welcoming you. Biljana is unfortunately not available today, but I hope I can also guide you through a little bit today's Versus Virus Lunch and Learn. And today we are very, very happy to welcome with us Nadene Canning from who will tell us about team performance. And so without any further ado, let's see if she is online. Hello Nadene, can you hear me? Yes, perfect, we hear you, wonderful. We are really looking forward to hear from you about your team performance. And I think with that, over to you and looking to hear.
There's an 8. That's good. Just drop it in the chat. I think I'm about an 8 too, 7.5, 8. Anybody else? Give me a number, any number. Okay, so we've got the half of 8 to a 4. Okay, well, hopefully you'll be able to stay with us for the rest of the session without, losing too much energy, or do some kind of, energizers. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Get some air going, because have you been in meetings nonstop since this morning? Is that one of the reasons? Hello, welcome. So just one question. I'm the only one that's talking. If people want to say something, can they unmute themselves, or is that not possible in this?
Yes, everybody can unmute themselves and even switch on the camera
perfect.
if I like.
Okay, great. So what I will do then is, Daniel, you're the slide master. Can you please go to the first slide? Okay. Super. Thank you very much. So, team performance. What puts me in this position with you today? Also newly formed teams. So they are a bunch of very qualified people that have come together for the first time and need to ramp up. And very often we think that, that's just going to happen. But what we understand is that we need to pay attention to teams so that we can get to performance. And so I usually spend 10 days with teams over the course of a 9-month period, working on how they will bring sustainable innovation into their businesses. And so the issues can be around supply chain, it can be around water valuation, procurement, sourcing, resource use. But ultimately, what I've understood over the last 5 years is that performance is really about how they will show up, how each team member will show up with themselves and with their teammates and with their stakeholders. And so with that being said, what I think would be helpful, because we're a small group today, is we could look together at this question and have a conversation. I'm hoping that this will be, there'll be an exchange between us over the next 60 minutes. And so if you could go to the next slide, we'll look at a question. Are any of you familiar with Menti? If you could raise your hand, let me know. Yes, great. So what I'd like you to do is then I'd like you to think about this question. What matters most to ensuring a positive team atmosphere? Think about that question. And when you've got a couple of answers, head over to Menti. You can do it on your mobile. Use the code 9209430, and we'll start populating with some answers. So what is it that you think matters most to ensuring a positive team atmosphere? So that's www.menti.com. You should see it on the slide. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. To think about that. So what have we got? 9209, 43. Okay. Cool. Okay. So if thank you very much for that. I've got a bunch of. I hope everyone has had the chance to answer. We've got some good things happening here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move a couple of things around so I can share my screen with you people. Move this out of the way. And there we go. Can you see this? So we have words like trust. Trust is really big and blue in the middle. Psychological safety, talking about feelings, communication, and engagement and success. So these are the things that you believe are really important to ensuring a good team atmosphere. So what we're going to talk about, this is perfect. These are great results, great answers, great ideas. Thank you very much for sharing. What I'd like to do from here is segue into, if you could please move me forward to the next slide. That'd be great. So, team performance. This quote is something that I really enjoy. It's a quote from Bill Gates. Teams should be able to act with the same unity of purpose and focus as well as a motivated individual. So unity of purpose is really about everybody being on the same page and how we work to get everyone on the same page. What do we do to build things like trust so that we can be successful? And very often, like I said before, we stick a whole bunch of very talented people together and we just think that things are going to happen. So if we're going to break it down a little bit, I'd like us to move to the next slide and talk a little bit about what we need to pay attention to in terms of dysfunctions of a team. So Patrick Lencioni has been talking about teams for probably around writing and talking and researching about teams. In my work with teams over the past 5 years, I tend to see the same 5 dysfunctions again and again and again. And so what I would like us to be able to do today is to think a bit about these different areas in attention to results, avoidance of accountability, lack of commitment, fear of conflict, and absence of trust. And so because we're a small group, what I think would be best is that you each take some reflection time. I will share with you in the chat jam boards. So there's a jam board for each one of these different dysfunctions. Correction, there's 4 jam boards. We're not going to work on all of them because I didn't think we'd have time. I'd like you to be thinking about inattention to results, avoidance of accountability, fear of conflict, and absence of trust. And so the questions that I'd like you to ask yourself is, what can we be doing as a team member to rectify, adjust these types of dysfunctions? So what I'm going to do now, and you'll see in the link that I share with you on the Jamboards in the chat, that the Jamboards relate to each one of these 4 things. So let me just put this in the chat for you. And you can go between all 4 and write what you think is are the most useful ideas. And I'm going to give you 5-6 minutes to do that. So you've got the link. And you all need access. I thought I had made this open. My apologies. So let me just do this with my phone. Thrive Collective has got access. Felix. Felix as well. You should now have access. And I'm assuming, okay, great. I can see you in the document. Super. Anybody else having access issues?
Yes, I just requested it.
You just requested it. Okay, thank you. Okay, I see you now. Got the mail. Alors, Miguel, tac. Et voilà.
Merci.
Je t'en prie. Claudia, just got yours, so I will definitely add you right now. Voilà. Super. Mhm. Great, these are being populated. This is super. Got about 4 minutes to populate the other 2 boards. So there's about a minute left. So I invite you to take a look at the boards, the different boards. If you have finished your inputs, take a stroll around the 4 different boards. Inattention to results got a lot of input. Avoidance of accountability a little bit less. Great input about the fear of conflict. We have to talk a little bit more about what open talk means. Talk about your fears, absence of trust. And our team, these are great. Thank you. So anything new there for you that has come up in terms of what to do to counter the dysfunctions? Any new ideas? Present results to avoid accountability. So we have 4. Setting the rules from the beginning, daily stand-ups, review leadership accountability, and present their results. And by present the results, I am assuming you're asking people specifically to present their results. We still have people adding. Great. Daily stand-ups, open talk, monitoring KPIs for inattention to results. Fear of conflict. Have a good mood for openness to say just anything. Meet outside business and have some beers. Building relationships and understanding others' pros and needs, priorities and needs in terms of the fear of conflict. An absence of trust. Review approaches. Talk about your fears. Super. Thank you for that input. What I'd like to do now is I'd like us to go to some of in the work that I've been doing with all the different teams that I showed you initially. I want to go through some of the things that have been the most successful and share them with you. So if anyone has anything that they'd like to add now or anytime, at any time, please feel free to just unmute yourself, jump in and comment or put something in the chat. Daniel, could you please take us to the next slide? Great, thank you very much. Sorry, I have a cat in my throat. Okay, so sorry about that. In terms of inattention to results and avoidance of accountability, what normally happens is I like to put them together because it's an approach to how we're going to be in our team. And in terms of cohesiveness and, you have a mentality, often in teams and intact teams, you need to build a culture. And so you want to create a culture where sometimes you could be leaning towards a hero culture where everything's around individual achievement. And what we try and do when we build intact teams to make them performant is have a collaborative leadership style. So the goal setting is something that we do together. It's impossible to achieve alone. And when we need help, we ask for help, and we can ask for help without being judged. So in a sense that there's this co-creation going on all the same time. So we're sharing, in a way, KPI creation. And the other piece of this, it has to do with relationship with others. It's asking and soliciting diversity of opinion. And the reason I like this collaborative leadership guide, Lorna Davis she has a TED Talk around collaborative leadership, and it just gives us a really nice foundation for having a conversation around, well, how are we going to work together as a team? Are we going to be contributing all together to have alignment, or are we going to have individual heroes? And the thing about co-creation is that it creates accountability, because if we build co-creation together, then we are more accountable and we pay attention to the results because it matters to us. So if that's clear, then I'll go to the next slide, please. And we'll look at, voila, I have to keep going back and forth. Fear of conflict. So fear of conflict here, what I tend to suggest very often, especially with new teams, when they come together, there needs to be clear rules set around how people are going to share. And the idea being, what kinds of conversations are we going to have together? Can we agree to disagree? Is that okay? And look at it not as necessarily, very often we spiral into in our heads, well, if I don't agree with this person, we'll automatically go into conflict mode. But the idea is, there's no real reason that you will go into conflict mode. It's about being able to have a conversation with someone and talk things through so that we support and create a culture of performance. And that performance culture can be created in 4 types of conversations. Sitting together and having a conversation, clear conversations around how we're doing. So, you know, and being honest and being vulnerable and being open about how you feel we're doing, how I feel I'm doing, and how I feel other team members are doing. How can we improve? How can I get better? How can I learn from you? How can I learn with you? How can we learn together? And what does that look like? What will this mean for our team? So if we build these things into each other, we're constantly learning together. What does that mean for our team? And what is our work? What is it that we're going to actually be doing together? Are we going to have a relationship together, or are we just going to be working on tasks together? And so it's about really being able to dig into all those different conversations and share honestly without any kind of judgment, and creating rules around how that sharing is going to be done without or allowing ourselves to be open about what it is that we're fearful of. And so what that takes me actually to the next slide. Because fear is such a big issue and it's a big blocker with people. Last year, so in one of the things that I've been doing is working with teams a lot. Another thing that I've been doing is teaching in a couple of universities. One of the things that I teach, which isn't really teachable, is leadership. And one of the methods that really, really works and students understand, and master students understand, and professionals understand, is the work that Dr. Brene Brown has brought it to the forefront in the last 5 years. Her TED Talks around vulnerability have been viewed over 50 million times. And I was really anxious to dig more into this work. And I went to Austin, Texas last year and worked with her for 2 days so that I could, 2 years would be wonderful, 2 days so that I could then bring this work more into my work in the consulting and the teaching that I do. And so the thing that's so interesting about fear is that it's not fear that gets in the way of our leadership. It's all of the protection that we put around ourselves so that we don't have the conversations. So that things get tough, we want to be understanding how that we can lean into our vulnerability and get curious instead of self-protecting. And that self-protection is our armor. So very often the armor can be not having the conversation. It can be passive aggressivity. It can be shooting off like these sort of like picky comments that are deflecting. And what we need to understand as teammates is how can we move more into a daring, vulnerable leader and look at things as being a learner as opposed to being a knower and being right. So, and that sometimes takes a while to sink in. I knew it took a while for it to sink in with me and for me to really understand what my armor was. One of my objectives, I wanted to be running a company by the time I was 30. And when I came to Switzerland, I came to run a team, and within 2 years I was promoted and I was running a company. And I was very, very much in armor, very protective, and really had to learn about being able to open up and be vulnerable and talk about feelings. And so one of the things that helped me at the time was being able to have feedback conversations. And so if we can go to the next slide, there's an engaged feedback checklist. And this can help us in the conversations that we want to have. And so feedback is something that we see again and again with teams. People automatically, very often, think that feedback is going to be criticism. And we're trying to flip the tables here so that feedback is really just having an honest conversation that we can have together, that we take time for. And usually it's around an issue, so the way someone has behaved or something that needs to be done. And so there's a feedback checklist. And what I've done here is I'm sharing 6 or 7 of the points that I believe are the most powerful to think about to engage in conversation. And again, all of this is in conversation with team members, always around how can we push the dial on performance. And so if I'm in a discussion with a teammate and I believe that we're at opposite sides of the table, then I need to think about whether or not I'm in competition with this person or I want to be collaborating with this person. If I'm thinking about having a problem or a challenge, and that challenge is something that's going to be between us, then I need to be thinking about how I can put the problem in front of us so that we can be working on it together. And I need to be really, really clear about that in the conversation so that there are boundaries around how we're going to work through this issue challenge together and co-create. The other two on the next slide, and I can share these resources with you if you're interested in them. There are links to them. I can easily share them with you at the end of the presentation. 2 others that I wanted to share is I'm ready to listen and I'm ready to ask questions and accept that I may not fully understand the issue. So there's 3 big things there. There's, am I ready to listen? Very often when we're in conversation, we're listening to the person, sort of, but what we're really doing is we're preparing our answer. As soon as we start doing that preparation of the answer, we're not listening anymore. We're not listening to what they're saying. So very often in terms of feedback, something that's really helpful is just to allow somebody to do their download, i.e. share everything that they have to share with you, and then ask questions around, what it is that you need to understand fully, and not take a position and not jump to a solution mode. So that again, you're in this co-creation of how we can work things out together around the situation that you've come together on. And one of the things that's really, really positive in all of this is appreciative inquiry. So if you're having this conversation with people, it's acknowledging what you do well, acknowledging what the other does well, as opposed to picking apart everything that's not going well. Because if we come from a place of appreciation, it opens the perspective and we can move into the future a lot faster than sitting on what's not going well. I don't know if any of you have used a method called Appreciative Inquiry, but it's wonderful for visioning and for taking strategy forward. So the last of the points is on the following slide for the feedback checklist. Now, I can hold you accountable without shaming or blaming you. Shaming or blaming is a really big issue. We do it in passive-aggressive remarks. We do it to other people. We won't shame you directly, but we will shame you to someone else, sometimes as a joke or a remark. It's not about shaming or blaming. It's about just being able to say, this is what we agreed to doing. What is it that's in your way? How can I help you? I'm willing to own my part. At Christmas, I was managing a very young team. We had incredibly high pressure deadlines to meet in ridiculously tight time frame. And there was an explosion. There was a team explosion. And 7 of us had to come to the table and talk about what was going on. And 2 of them didn't want to come to the table. And I said to them, I'm willing to own what my part is in this. Are you willing to own yours? and they said time out. They needed to think about what their part was, because that question made them realize that it was all blame. It was all being pushed on everybody else. Whereas if we're all in it together, we all have responsibility and accountability to each other. And when I did that, what I learned afterwards, because the whole dynamic of the team shifted, is because I was vulnerable and I was open, it created trust, whereby people saw that I was not this, KPI robot, and that we could all work together and have the conversation. So that takes us to the last dysfunction, which is around absence of trust. And so this is the kicker, I find. And again, this is something that Brene Brown has helped a lot with. And she says that if you find yourself struggling with trust, the first thing you need to examine is how you're treating yourself. And so there's this teeny weeny little exercise that I'm going to ask you to do. But Daniel, I need a time check because I'm concerned about time. How much time? This goes until 1:15 or 1 o'clock?
1:15, so we have time.
Okay, cool. So then what I'd like you to do for yourself, you're not going to have to share this. I'd like you to write down 3 words on a piece of paper, which I have to find because, voila, 3 words: safe, strong, and kind. Safe, strong, kind. Once you've written them down on the piece of paper, I'd like you to think about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how safe you make people feel when you're with your team, how strong you are with them, and how kind you are with them. Scale of 1 to 10. And so when you've done that, just give me a thumbs up in your, because I can't see any of you, so I really don't even know if you're there, but I'm hoping that you are. Super. A couple more, a little bit more time. So I've got half of you that have said something. I'm waiting for the other half of you. Or am I not paying attention to the chat? Okay. So now you've done that, okay? You answered those 3 questions for your team. Great, thank you, Felix. Now what I want you to do is I want you to think about the same 3 words, but I'm going to ask you if it has to do with you. Now think about yourself. How safe do you allow yourself to feel with yourself? How strong do you feel? And how kind are you to yourself? And put those numbers down as well. And please give me a thumbs up. Thank you, Felix, when you've had the chance to think about these as well. Okay, cool. Thank you. So now the question is there a difference between how safe you are with others and how safe you are with yourself? Is there a difference between how kind you are to others and yourself and how strong you are? Very often in this conversation, there is a difference. And so I invite you, and again, this relates to trust, kindness, safety, strength, relates to how we feel about ourselves, how we show up with others, how vulnerable we are allowed to feel with ourselves, the feelings that we have, can we share those feelings without judging? ourselves and without being judged. And I find that this is, the conversation can be, well, do you trust people and do you trust yourself? And often we say, well, sure, I trust everybody. And then the question becomes, well, do they have to prove that you trust them? And that's where this whole conversation has to backpedal to, if they have to prove their trust to you, why do they have to prove their trust to you? So that's why there's a very, very big link between trust, fear, vulnerability, and where we're showing up with ourselves. And so I'm going to leave you with that, some of this takes time to digest. What I can say is that the beauty of the work that Brene Brown has done over the last 20 years as a researcher is that she's a data freak. So she's constantly doing research and building on the research. And she has come up with what she calls the anatomy of trust. And I've been working with the anatomy of trust, and she loves acronyms and packaging things, and which is fine. It's, I'm not going to judge that, but we either like it or we don't like it. And so she's come up with this anatomy of trust, and it's an acronym, and the acronym is called BRAVING. Thank you. And so the B is about, do I honor my own boundaries? What are those boundaries? What do I allow to happen in my team, in my job, in my work? Is there a boundary? For example, is there a boundary anymore between my work and my life? Last year, I worked over 400 hours of overtime in like an 8-month period. My boundaries were clearly blown. But I was reliable. I was totally reliable. And I counted on myself again and again and again. So that's the R. The B is the boundaries. The R is reliable. How reliable are you to others, but more importantly, to yourself? Accountability. Do I hold myself accountable? Or am I just, blaming and shaming all the time? And the vault has to do with how protective of we are of the stories that people tell us. So if I come to you and I share my fears about not being able to do X, I've trusted you. I trust that that information you will share with no one. And if you do with that with me, I trust the same thing. And we need to, I think one of the things that I've realized is that we need to be very careful of what we share when, with whom. I think I'd like to go to the next, please. Voila, integrity. So integrity is, did I stay in my integrity? Did I stay in my integrity, or am I trying to please? Am I trying to please? Am I too worried about saying no? Am I know that this is going to stretch me far too big? And can I stay in my integrity and say, whatever it is that I need to be saying that keeps me aligned with my values? Non-judgmental. So how judgmental am I being with myself? Am I good enough? Am I fast enough? Whatever that the voice is that is, on repeat. If we can just, one of the things that I do is, I just try and if those voices are happening, then I just say, okay, you're going out that way now. You're not staying with me anymore. How hard are we on ourselves? So non-judgment, okay? We're learning and we're getting better all the time. And we're building in feedback with our team members so that we can learn together, co-create together, and get better together and have conversations around how we can get better together without insanely high expectations. That's another issue. Very often we set very, very high expectations. They have to be real. They have to be realist, and we have to be comfortable. There's a stretch. Stretch goals are great, but they need to be realistic. But I'm getting off topic. So non-judgment, and the big one, and this again is why I asked you to do those 3 words, is how was I generous with myself? Or did I give myself the benefit of the doubt? The benefit of the doubt. So are we generous with ourselves? Generosity is huge. Are we kind with ourselves? Can we show up with all of our bits and pieces and say that, you know, this is who I really am? So I've talked a lot. The floor is yours. Do you have questions, comments, anything that you'd like to add, share? Please unmute yourself. It would be great if I could hear your voice. Adela, do you want to, Claudia?
First of all, thank you so much. Very inspiring, and it was like a heart-to-heart conversation. Amazing. Why it was interesting for me, it was especially the point fear of conflict. I'm in a team with people that I cherish a lot from past experiences and also friends, but we are on a new project right now, creating 2 different businesses. And my pure fear is like, oh my God, what if this goes in a different direction and all these 20 years of friendship and awesomeness might go in the, you know, wrong direction. But it's encouraging what you say. It's like, have the conversations that really set the ground, and as it was in the past, we will make it also to the future. So thank you for that.
The friend is solid, right? The work is another issue. Thank you for that. And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Claudia, I can see you. Did you want to say something?
Yes, please.
Lovely.
Okay. Thank you for your contribution. I really needed it. Came in the right time for me and my team. And somehow I confirmed that I'm on the right path. I'm just not being able really to, I guess, to have that understood by my team members. That last exercise, it showed a lot. And it's great that what you've said, it comes to my practice, my private practice, because I'm a Buddhist, and there's a lot here that it's in my path, and I've been working on for many years, and I want to take that to all my endeavors in my life. And I think that's the way to go, being open, being vulnerable, and let people be open and vulnerable. And we're all in this together. And that's great. Thank you very much. That was
Thank you, Claudia.
Awesome.
One of the things, so I teach at the EPFL, and I teach negotiation techniques. And last year I brought this vulnerability into leadership, into negotiation. And I asked the students, and so there's like 40 students in the room, and they're engineers, and they're anywhere between, I don't know, 24 to 30. And so we worked on vulnerability together, and we worked on busting the myths around vulnerability. And so 80% of the students are guys, and I asked them, you know, whether or not vulnerability, what they believe. And I asked them if they believe vulnerability is a strength or a weakness. And 90% of them still think it's a weakness. And that when you ask them why, it's because of, you know, all of the things that have the beliefs and the values and everything that we have been weighted down with for so long. So there's a lot of unlearning that needs to be done, a massive amount of unlearning.
Yes, I think so too. And once I read something like knowledge is learned something every day, but wisdom is losing something every day. So that's it.
That's brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there's 5 minutes, people. Would anyone else like to share anything? I'm out of words.
Yes. Can you repeat the last thing that made you giggle? I didn't hear that.
I said I was out of words.
No, before someone mentioned something and I couldn't quite hear, and you mentioned, oh, that's interesting, and I couldn't hear.
The wisdom. Every day you lose a little bit of wisdom. You learn, but you lose a little bit of wisdom. Is that what you didn't hear?
Yes.
Well, it's.
Yeah, please repeat what you said. You were better.
Okay. Knowledge, it's learning something every day, and wisdom is losing something every day.
Got it. Thank you. And I wanted to ask Nadene, so in our current team, things are going very well, and we have trust, very creative, and we are delivering. However, this is initially we had one team member whom then we kicked out because she wasn't delivering and not answering emails, etc. And we are setting up, it seems that we're in conflict now because that team member wants to take our idea on her own. How do you suggest we approach that?
I would have a trust and reconciliation conversation real fast.
Truth, test, and reconciliation?
Pardon me?
You said truth, test, and reconciliation?
Trust and reconciliation, yeah. I come from Canada, and the Native American Indians and the Canadians have been having trust and reconciliation conversations. They're circles. You come together, and it's a whole process for building trust. You have to understand. You have to first both parties have to want to go through a trust and reconciliation process, which means that they want to be friends again. They want to be working together again. They want to be a unit again. So the first thing that you want to figure out is, do you all want to be a unit again? And how can you rebuild that together? And that is the process that will take probably a bunch of conversations, and dropping the judgment and the shaming and the blaming, and doing some listening around why this person was or wasn't delivering, and trying to create a clean slate.
Thank you.
Or just going the warrior mode and staying in conflict. And the issue with conflict is that it sucks up so much energy, and it takes away from the good stuff that you want to be doing. So if my sense is, if you can tap into what this person is really good at, the person that got excommunicated, and bring them in and help them build a stronger team with what they're really good at, you're all going to get way better. If that's possible at all to do.
Thank you.
Pleasure, my pleasure. Any other comments, remarks? Hungry people, stomach grumbling, hungry people?
Yeah, I do have one regarding conflict management. As you mentioned, sometimes it's just draining the energy, especially depending on who's on the other side. If the other one also wants to put the conflicts in front and not in between. What would you recommend for the situations in which there's just one party that wants to go together and wants to put the conflict or the issue ahead to learn, and the other party is like, whatever we would do, it wouldn't work? Should we just kick them out? Or
so how many people are we talking about here? altogether?
I was thinking of another team that I decided to leave, actually. And the mentor and myself, we were the creators of the idea. We even won a hackathon, and then there were other two people that I don't know. It's, you know, like when all of a sudden you don't have a say, but you are the marketing actually, and the mentor is the mentor, and then the other personalities get so strong, and whenever you try to learn is not a learning. So we decided to leave. We tried to have some conversations and didn't work out. We left, but I still think about it. Oh, maybe I should have done something different or should have tried something else.
So it was a competition. You ended up being all in.
Yeah, it was the versus virus competition, actually. Now I'm with a different project here. It was a versus virus competition. As a team, we won. And then some of us, actually the major stakeholders, we left.
And the idea is now being carried forward by another group of
people. Yeah.
And how does that make you feel?
I don't know, sad.
Yeah.
But I know I wouldn't have.
From a philosophical point of view, I mean, I've walked away from, I don't know how many ideas I've birthed and other people have taken them forward.
Right.
And George Soros, like he won't give an idea to the founder. He just won't do it. He won't fund a project that goes to the founder. He's got to get a new management team in. So there's a lot to be said about, you birthed the idea. Are you the right person to make it happen? So that's a self-reflection thing, like, you know, a total honesty thing that you don't have to share with anybody, but you have to come to terms with. And whatever the answer is there, you either let it go or you try and make it work. But yeah, it's totally fair to feel sad. It's like you've lost something for sure. Yeah. But yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's reassuring that to hear that also other people just walked away from something that they birthed.
Yeah.
There will be other ideas.
Yeah, and that's nice. I mean, sometimes they just get ripped away from you. I mean, I've had that happen too. So walking away is a much, you know, less violent path. So people, I'm conscious of time. It's on my count 13:17. So I can share the resources with you. If you send me an email, I can send you the feedback. I can send you the braving. Just ask or connect with me on LinkedIn. It's up to you. Or Twitter. Twitter is my #1 learning tool. I'm here. Thank you very much. And I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nadine. It was really, really nice. And it was really, really interesting to listen. So let's give Nadine a big, big thank you. Next week, we are going to move to Nicholas Zanotti, and he will tell us more about achieving your goals by defining objectives and key results with Nicholas. I hope you enjoyed it today. Thanks a lot to all of you. Thanks a lot, Nadine. It was really, really interesting, and we are looking forward to see you all again next Friday. Thanks a lot,
thank you.
and see you then next week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye, people. Thank you.